Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take sources that you, our listeners, send us and really dig into them, pull out the most interesting bits.
Yeah, the compelling stuff.
Exactly. And today, we're heading back to 19th century England. Got some historical texts from a listener about this really unsettling string of deaths in a small village.
Right. And our mission today, if you will, is to explore this case, the story of Jonathan Balls. He's from a village called Happisburgh.
Happisburgh. Okay.
And he was accused, but only after he died, of poisoning, well, a whole load of his own family members. We're talking roughly 1824 up to about 1845.
Posthumously accused, so he never actually stood trial.
No, never. It's a really strange one. A suspected serial poisoner, mainly targeting his own family, who basically checks out before the law catches up.
Wow. Okay. So we're going to look at what the possible motive. The deaths themselves must have been suspicious.
Oh, definitely. Very suspicious circumstances. And also how the community, the neighbors and locals, eventually pushed for answers after he was gone.
Sounds fascinating, if incredibly dark. Let's get into it. Who exactly was this Jonathan Balls?
Okay, so Jonathan Balls, born 1769, died April 20th, 1846. Lived his whole life, it seems, in Happisburgh.
So a local through and through.
Absolutely, but maybe not the most popular local. The sources describe him as a, quote, bad character.
Oh.
Yeah, means he had a bit of a history. Petty crimes, apparently spent some time in prison on more than one occasion.
Right, so not exactly a pillar of the community.
Not quite, no.
And his family, what was the setup there?
He was married to a woman named Elizabeth. They had 3 daughters, and those daughters all grew up, got married, had kids of their own.
Okay, sounds fairly normal on the surface.
On the surface, yes, but the texts mention money problems. A long history of poverty, actually.
Ah. Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, for a long time, the family relied on something called parochial relief, basically help from the local parish, like early welfare.
Right, I've heard of that.
And as Jonathan got older, it seems this shifted. He started depending more and more on financial support from his grown-up children and their families.
And this is where the alleged motive comes in.
This is the theory, yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty grim, but the idea is that he started, well, removing family members.
Removing them? You mean killing them?
Allegedly, yes. Poisoning them, specifically, so that whatever money or support they provided or received would instead be directed towards him.
Good grief, that's cold. Utterly calculating.
It really is, if true.
So when did this pattern, this disturbing pattern of deaths actually begin?
Well, the timeline gets murky, but things really seem to kick off suspicion-wise in the early 1830s.
Okay, what happened then?
Around that time, records show Balls started buying arsenic. Quite a bit of it, apparently, from nearby towns.
Arsenic. And did he say why?
Oh, yes. He had an explanation ready. Rats. Said he had a terrible rat infestation at home.
Ah, the classic rat excuse. Convenient.
Very.
So who is the first family member whose death looks suspicious in hindsight?
The first one usually noted is his daughter, Maria Lacey. She died quite young, only about 24.
And the cause?
Officially. It was put down to mistreatment by her husband, combined with an unidentified illness.
Unidentified illness. Something tells me we'll hear that phrase again.
I'm afraid so, yeah. After Maria, other family members started dying, also under these sort of vague circumstances.
Like who?
Well, on Christmas Day, believe it or not, in 1836, his granddaughter, Maria Green, just 13 months old, she passed away. Cause, mysterious.
Oh, a baby. Christmas Day. That's awful.
It is. Then, June 1839, another granddaughter, Ann Peggs, she was 8 years old, died from a presumed illness.
Presumed illness is just stacking up.
It really is. Then October 1841, another grandson, William Green, he was 3. He died shortly after his little sister, Martha Green, who was only 13 months old, had also died.
2 siblings close together.
Yes.
Yes.
And it might go back even further. The source mentions another one of his own children and one of his parents dying suspiciously after they'd moved in with him. That was way back in 1824.
Wow. So potentially over 20 years of this. It's incredible it took so long for anyone to officially investigate.
Well, here's the thing. The locals were suspicious. The neighbors.
Are.
Oh, yeah. Apparently they asked for inquests at least twice. But for whatever reason, nothing formal happened. No official investigation was launched back then.
Why not? Any idea?
The source isn't totally clear. Maybe lack of concrete proof, maybe reluctance from the authorities. It does kind of highlight how things worked back then, perhaps an unwillingness to dig into family matters unless forced.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what finally did force their hand? What was the tipping point?
It seems to have been another quick succession of deaths. A real cluster.
Okay.
In September 1845, another grandson, Samuel Green, died. Then just 4 months later, Ball's wife, Elizabeth, who was apparently bedridden by this point, she died too.
His wife as well.
And then the final one, it seems, April 17th, 1846, another granddaughter, Elizabeth Ann Pessel. She died.
Goodness. So grandson, wife, granddaughter, all within about 7 months.
Exactly. And that seems to have been the last straw for the Happisburgh community.
Yeah.
They'd had enough.
I can imagine. And what happened right after that last death, Elizabeth Ann Pessel?
Well, just 3 days later, 3 days after his granddaughter died, Jonathan Balls himself died at home.
He died too. How?
Reportedly after a sudden illness. Took ill a few days before. And here's where it gets a bit weird.
Oh, more weird than potential serial poisoning.
Well, weird in a different way. Believing he was dying, apparently he gave some very, very specific instructions for his burial.
Like what? A simple pine box?
Not exactly. He wanted his Bible. Okay, fair enough. But also 2 plum cakes.
Plum cakes?
Yep, 1 for each hand.
You're kidding.
Nope. Plus a fire iron, some coal tongs, and handkerchiefs. All to be buried with him.
Okay, that is bizarre. Plum cakes, tongs. Any theories on what that was about? A guilty conscience? Some weird ritual?
Who knows? It's certainly strange. Maybe a glimpse into a very troubled mind. Or perhaps just eccentricity. Hard to say.
Definitely adds another layer of oddity. But his death, coming right after his granddaughter's, that's what finally triggered the official action.
That's right. The timing was just too much. The locals really pressured the coroner, a Mr. Pilgrim. They urged him, demanded really, that he exhume the bodies.
And did he?
He did. Eventually, Coroner Pilgrim gave the order. They exhumed Jonathan Balls himself and his granddaughter, Elizabeth Pessel, the last one to die.
Right. And I assume this wasn't done in secret.
No, it seems quite official. The local pastor was there, church wardens, police officers too. They were all present.
And what did they find? This must be where the arsenic comes back in.
Bingo. The key finding, quote, an unusually large quantity of arsenic found in both bodies, Jonathan Balls and Elizabeth Pessel.
Wow. So the neighbors' suspicions, they were right all along.
Tragically, yes. Decades of whispers and fear finally confirmed.
Yeah, so arsenic found. What happened next? Did they start looking for witnesses?
They did. This discovery, obviously, kicked off a proper investigation. They started questioning the surviving relatives, anyone who worked for the family, servants, and so on.
And did anyone know anything? Or see anything?
Yes. A key witness emerged, a maid named Sarah Carrison.
Okay. Sarah Carrison, what did she say?
Her testimony was pretty explosive. She said she actually saw Jonathan Balls putting a, quote, mysterious white powder into his wife Elizabeth's teacup while she was sick in bed.
She saw him do it.
That's what she testified, yes. And she said that after this, Elizabeth's condition got much worse very quickly, and then she died.
That's incredibly damning. Did Carrison mention anything else?
She did, actually. Something about herself. She said she also got sick at one point.
Sick how?
Vomiting, severe chest pain, symptoms very much like, well, arsenic poisoning.
Yeah.
This happened after she tasted some food that had been prepared in the house.
So she might have been accidentally poisoned herself? Or maybe deliberately?
It certainly sounds like she had a poisoning episode. Her testimony, linking Balls directly to adding powder to his wife's drink and her own illness, that must have been huge for the investigation.
Absolutely pivotal, I'd imagine. So with the arsenic confirmed and this eyewitness account, what was the reaction more broadly?
Oh, it became huge news, a proper media sensation for the time. People were fascinated and horrified.
I bet. Did it reach beyond the local papers?
It did. It was even discussed in Parliament.
Really? In Parliament?
Yes. An MP, a Mr. Wakely, specifically raised it. He asked for an official government inquiry into the whole affair.
And did the government agree? What was the response?
The Home Secretary at the time, Sir James Graham, responded. He basically said he'd try to convince the Home Office to investigate further.
He'd try. Even with all this, arsenic, eyewitnesses, multiple deaths, parliamentary attention, it wasn't an automatic full-scale investigation.
Apparently not immediately guaranteed. It really does show perhaps how different the systems were. Maybe budget constraints, maybe procedural hurdles. It's striking, though.
It really is. But as we said at the start, despite all this, Balls himself never faced a judge or jury.
Correct. His suicide came before any charges could be formally laid, before any trial could happen. So the investigation, while uncovering strong evidence, never reached that point of legal conclusion in court.
So let's just pull this together. We have Jonathan Balls, known bad character, history of crime, living in poverty, increasingly reliant on his family.
Hmm.
Then, over maybe 20 years, a shocking number of his relatives die. Children, grandchildren, his wife, maybe even a parent, often with vague causes like unidentified illness.
Right. While he's buying arsenic, supposedly for rats.
The community gets suspicious, but nothing happens for years. Then a final cluster of deaths, including his granddaughter. Then Balls himself dies suddenly, requesting plum cakes for his burial.
Don't forget the plum cakes.
Can't forget those. The community finally forces exhumations. They find large amounts of arsenic.
And a maid comes forward saying she saw him put powder in his wife's tea and she got sick too.
It becomes a media sensation, discussed in Parliament. But he's already dead, never tried, never convicted.
That's the story in a nutshell. A really disturbing one.
It absolutely is. And it leaves so many questions hanging, doesn't it?
Definitely. We know arsenic was involved. We have the witness statement. But
Yeah.
what was the full extent? Some early reports speculated maybe even over 20 victims. We just don't know for sure.
20. Wow.
And also, how did this family, this community, function in a way that let this happen, apparently unnoticed or unaddressed officially, for so long? What were those dynamics?
It really hammers home the importance of that community voice, though. Their persistence eventually brought something to light, even if it wasn't a conviction.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about investigating poisoning back then. So easy to mistake for illness. It's a chilling reminder.
It is. And maybe a final thought for you, the listener. How do we react today? When we hear about strange patterns or unexplained events within families or communities, do we dismiss them? Do we listen? Something to mull over. Thanks for diving deep with us on this very dark case.